First, I want to thank you, like I said, all three of you for taking time to talk to me today. Let's go ahead and get some introductions out of the way, starting with Luhui.
Haku, everyone. My name is Luhui Whitebear. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Center Director at the Native American Longhouse Una House.
Teresita.
Hi, everybody. I'm Teresita Alvarez-Cortez. I work for University Housing and Dining Services as the Director of Diversity Initiatives and Programs. She, her, hers pronouns.
Dorian.
Hey, y'all. My name is Dorian Smith, and I work in the Educational Opportunities Program, or as everyone calls it, EOP.
And for those who don't know, my name is Brandi Douglas. She, they pronouns. I'm the Assistant Director of Outreach in the Office of Institutional Diversity. And the four of us are just really going to have a quick conversation about these two amazing learning communities, the NIA Black Scholars Learning Community and the munk-skukum Indigenous Living Learning Community. I hope I got those correct, or at least a little bit better than when I was trying earlier. Y'all will correct me and I will appreciate the correction. So let's talk about these two learning communities. We were just discussing how they came about. And so Teresita, I want you to kind of go back in what you just said about you connecting with Luhui or Luhui connecting with you.
Yeah, so having learning communities, living learning communities that were focused on the experiences of minoritized student groups had been something that we've been talking about on campus for a long time, actually. And the receptivity, let's say, of doing that kind of work on campus when I first got here was lukewarm at best. And I think thankfully had evolved by the time that Lou approached me about doing this type of work. And so probably in the fall of 2018, actually, right? Lou approached and said, hey, is this something that you'd ever want to work on? And I thought it was really exciting. Putting together a living learning community takes it's a long timeline because you have to have so much in place before you go to put it out and start recruiting for it. And so it took about over a year to get together. It took about several months to get together a proposal, doing research, kind of explaining our reasoning, our vision, the possibility of what this could mean, right? Because the communities are pretty small, but we thought that we could start small and grow. And in the course of doing that work, then Dorian approached and said, hey, I hear you're doing this work with Lou. Is this something that you want to work on with me as well? And of course, I was really excited as well. And so there just seemed to be a large opportunity to do some work together, even though they're distinct living learning communities. But given the history of the communities in the US and the shared solidarities and the partnerships that already existed on campus, it seemed like a good fit to work together on this, right? And so both of the communities currently share a floor in Polling Hall, and they're in their initial pilot year this year.
So let's talk about that, Luhui and Dorian. You all are setting this up, getting ready to open these communities to our students, and then the pandemic hits. What were your initial thoughts? Did you want to continue? Did you think about pausing? Like, what were your initial thoughts when this was starting to come up into the fall?
I think that for me, it was kind of like, because we had worked so hard on getting these communities established. And like Teresita said, it was very intentional working together and knowing we can help build something beautiful together. I mean, look at the solidarity work that created the cultural resource centers on campus, some national work that reflected, and some historic work that it reflected as well in building community. And so it was kind of a bummer because we didn't know what was going to happen with the pandemic coming, but we didn't want to stop the momentum. And especially with working with student artists and creating the space to reflect the presence of the communities that are represented. And we just wanted to keep going forward. And give it a try and see what happened. And we knew we would have a smaller cohort this year, and that was okay, because as long as we can help students feel like they had a home on campus and we're building that community together, that is what we wanted to happen and is what happened. I don't know if Dorian has more to add.
Yeah, it sounds like you were a lot more calm than I was. When we were building this out and it came to the point where we were so excited, right? We had a recruitment plan. We were planning on going out to high schools all over the state and letting folks know. And when the pandemic hit, it was like the brakes, hit everything, right? So I was like, man, I don't know what we're going to do. I really wanted to provide this cool experience because every single part was, so we put so much thought and passion into it, right? We were like, we want the walls and the colors and everything to feel like you're at home and to represent you and your culture. Like we tried to have students that worked at the cultural centers to work with our partners in UHDS to design the space. And so to have it get to that point and, we're right at the fourth quarter and they got, it's like the Super Bowl when the lights go out. It's like, what do we do? But you know what, it was, ended up being great, ended up being a blessing because we still provided students with space. We provided community and we were able to do what we had planned on doing. Although at a smaller scale, I think we still got the opportunity to go through it as sort of a pilot year, if you can say. And I think it was actually really important for students this year because, if there's students that are second and third year students that come and say, what can I do to find this community? And I don't know what to tell them because we're not doing that much in person. So having that on the floor where you can be around other students, you're learning together, and you're really building that community when so many other students aren't able to, I think was really a benefit for the students that were able to participate.
And I think
Yeah,
that there,
Oh,
sorry.
no, go ahead. No.
I think that there was some challenges along the way as well, right? Because everything was pivoting and everybody was trying to figure out what to do. And so in order to figure out how we would need to like rethink some of these things, right? I think that was hard. And I agree. I think that especially with, whenever you have a first year of a program, it's a learning year anyways, right? You learn about the things that, as carefully as you can plan something, when you're in it, particularly a year-long, cycle, you're going to inevitably find things that you might have missed or things that you overestimated or underestimated or whatever. And so you add a pandemic on top of that, it's just magnified, right? But in a cool sense, like I think because there was a small amount of students, like some of those kinks continue to be worked out, right? And so this upcoming fall, we're hoping for a full cohort, and hopefully some of those things will have been, thought of and resolved by the time we have a full cohort. At one point in the trajectory of the recruitment, we were full, right? We were full on the floor. And then as we were talking, as we made decisions as a campus for the safety of everyone to do mostly remote in the fall and so forth, like the number started to decline. But knowing that we were full at capacity and actually spilling over when we're planning on being on campus or that was in the foreseeable future, that's really promising, right? It was a really promising, even though it didn't come to fruition for the fall and continue into the winter and the spring, that let us know like, hey, we're doing something that students want, right? And so seeing the cycle come back this year and trying our best to connect with students, it's been difficult to do that, knowing that they can't come to campus and, START looks a little different, we're being remote again this year. And so we're trying our best to meet them where they're at over the phone, doing Zoom sessions, email, postcard campaigns, right? but it's still difficult. Our
Yeah.
numbers look good, pretty good right now, though.
Good. That's what I was wondering if the numbers, because of, what's happened this year, are steady, or if they're increasing. Is there, what was I gonna ask? I guess my biggest question is, what was it like for those students, or what feedback have you heard from these students in this year of being at a pilot year? Teresita, you named it quite well, of like, even just if it wasn't a pandemic, the first year is always a learning year. So what have your students experienced in this first year that you're taking into the next year?
I think the biggest thing that has been present is that they did find community. And even though it was a smaller cohort than anybody would have expected, given the pandemic and knowing how isolated they would have felt without the community, I'm really thankful that we continue to go forward, because you do see those connections. And I know that some of the students I interact with munk-skukum have built really strong relationships with each other, and also with some of the staff at the center, and thinking about like what next year looks like, and imagining themselves being part of campus community next year. And that's what we hope for our students when they first come to campus, right, is that they see themselves staying. And so I think that has really reflected the work we would hope it would do in a small scale, and knowing that we can only grow from here. And so I'm looking forward to taking that feeling of connectedness that was experienced this year and continuing it on to next year, and just continuing to make it stronger.
What would you like to add around Mia?
Yeah, so I would say similar things. I think one of the things that was really cool that the students got to experience, and I've been hearing, is that a part of it is that they got to take courses together, got to take ethnic studies classes together. And for me and Lou and Teresita, it was really important that students have like this background knowledge of self, right? And to be able to have that from a professor, not just that, looks like them, but, that is going to be there for them. So having a professor that joins every single floor meeting, like Dr. Thompson and Dr. Whitebear, like that was huge, right? And another thing that I'm hearing that's actually really, really nice is that because this is a pilot year and we're getting to try things out, we started a kind of smaller version of our Beaver Connect. So we connected some of those students up with some second year, third year ELP students and faculty member on top of that. So they also get that support. So, we've been hearing some pretty good feedback from the students that participated and also from the mentors. So I'm happy that we get to help them to build that connection.
That's amazing. Just both of those pieces that you named in building community, but also attributing to their future success as they go through the rest of their years at Oregon State. Those are my only questions. I don't know if I missed anything that you want to make sure we name before we end our time together. There's something that you feel is missing.
I don't know. I think a thing that probably shouldn't be as understated is the importance of Teresita and her role in making this happen. I know she, like many of us as folks of color, are really modest, but she is like the bomb, right? She helped on every step, every hiccup, and stepped in and had a huge impact on making this thing happen, and making it just amazing. So I know personally, I think I was asked to do a retreat, and then I got to actually spend some time. I was like, man, this person is awesome, and that's when I kind of got the thought to follow up about Mia, and the thought process, and she took the idea and turned it into something amazing. So I think I think, you know, she deserves all the flowers.
Thank you, Dorian. But I think that is one other thing that I think is really important is that these communities are a partnership between multiple offices.
Yeah.
And it would have been really difficult for any one of us to do this alone. You know, we just, you know, the expertise that you would need from various places is just, you don't have in one unit. And so I think having the partnership that we have, you know, obviously with EOP, with the centers, with UHDS, with ethnic studies, you know, that's a very special partnership on campus, right? It is not, it is pretty unique, I would say, to have so many partners that have worked really well together and are striving for the same common cause, which I think is why we're so invested, right? We see the potential in these communities. We've seen it this year, and we know that it has even more in store, you know, for the future. And we see this partnership continuing to flourish and the communities continuing to grow, right? For us, it's obviously it's supporting the students who are here now and who are going to be here this fall, but it's also understanding that building those pathways for those students who are already Oregon State, you know, students is going to build pathways for other students to come in, fill those spaces and more, right? Like that they're going to go back to their communities, they're going to go back to their families and hopefully say, hey, I had a really great experience in Nia. I had a really great experience in munk-skukum, right? And that is the conversation that the communities have, right? That is a conversation that allows them to see themselves as truly being part of the Oregon State community in a real way, to claim a space, right? And that's really special. And I don't take that for granted. And I think that we see it, and we're almost at the cusp of that, right? Like we can see the future coming. And so the investment feels doubly worthwhile for the students who are here and the students who are on their way here.
I think I'll add in too, on top of what Dorian and Teresita said, is that this is a really great example of how awesome something can turn out if you work in partnership and collaboration. A lot of times in higher ed, there's almost a competitive nature, and that didn't happen here. We're like, hey, we all bring something different to this team, and we can reflect some great work that's been done before, and we can create something really awesome. And we see it happening. And I really appreciate having been able to work in partnership across a team. And like it was already mentioned, it's so many different dimensions and thinking about what's in the best way of supporting students. And without each one of us, we probably would have missed one of those pieces. And so it really took a lot of teamwork and team effort to make it possible. And I think that a lot can be learned for how we do things on campus as well.
Yeah, and I guess last, the thing that I love and I'm really excited about with both of these being together, right, and sharing a floor, is that we aren't competing, right? It's not an oppression Olympics, right? For us, it's about solidarity and about learning about the importance of both of our shared history within this country, learning about how we can both grow together as Black and Indigenous students, faculty, staff, people, and how we can support each other. So I think it's really important in the way, not just that we structure this as offices, but also as floors, right? So having it so we can start where they're taking those classes separately to learn Black history and Indigenous history, and coming together in the winter to take an ethnic studies class together, and to have both of those professors there to have this conversation, I think is really dope. So I'm excited about how that is going to play out, especially for our students. Is I've kind of noticed in this last year, it seems like everything is so divisive. I think it's really important for us to learn how to come together in community and solidarity within our communities. And I'm happy we're doing that.
Yeah, and your partnership is definitely role modeling that quite well.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. Like the students see that, right? They see us working together and they see how to do that and think about how to apply that in their lives and their futures as well. And I think that's pretty awesome.